What's your lead takeaway from last night, Gasper?
My lead takeaway from last night is just the juice that Bailey Zappe brought to the team. There was a different level of energy, I think, offensively than we've seen for most of the year. I mean, look, the best performance by a quarterback this year still goes to Mac Jones against Buffalo. I think people probably don't remember that right now, but 25 of 30, more than 200 yards in the comeback. But it just seems like those guys, whether it was Devontae Parker on Sunday when they scored no points, or Juju Smith-Schuster, Hunter Henry last night when they scored 21 in the first half, those guys are playing for Bailey Zappe and making plays for Bailey Zappe. And it's a noticeable and notable difference in the energy level and execution of the offense. And you guys know I'm not the biggest Zappe guy, but I mean, you can't deny that. You can't deny that he brings a level of juice to the offense and vibes to the offense, whatever you want to call it, that's just not there when melancholy Mack is running the offense.
Do you think it's a fair second guess that they stuck with Mac Jones too long?
Well, I mean, yes and no. The reason I'll say yes is yeah, you see what's happening with Zappe. But the reason I say no is who says that was just Bill's decision? Yeah, I mean, I think there's a good chance that there was an element of ownership involvement in that, even if it's not, a directive. Hey, you have to start Mac. Just go back to when Robert Kraft was on, what was it, Fox Business or whatever, and he's talking about, I'm a believer in Mac Jones, and we have a good young quarterback. And Bill sort of talked about it a little bit on Sunday. He was asked why Zappe deserved the job and maybe why they didn't go to him sooner. He's like, well, we were trying to let Mac work through his, and he kind of caught himself and said progression. He wanted to say troubles. Mac still has the higher upside, but if he can't get it going, it doesn't really matter. And at this point, it has to be Zappe's show from here on out. I mean, again, if you look at the game with Zappe, the first half obviously was very good, but he really had one drive, and it was that first drive. After that, the other touchdown, it's 2 plays, 11 yards after the pick, which is the complementary football they need to play. Kudos to the defense for the pick. Kudos to the offense and Zappe for converting on it with the touchdown. But, 2 plays, 11 yards. And then the third drive is 4 plays, 59 yards. And, boy, that DeMonte KZ, they picked on him all night long, starting with the first deep ball to Juju Smith-Schuster, which, as Herbstreit pointed out, was not particularly well thrown. It was more Juju made the play. And then KZ really, any halfway decent safety probably picks off the third touchdown pass to Hunter Henry. That was a dangerous throw, but it was a touchdown. And Zappe had the nerve and the verve to make that throw. So again, it's, let's not go overboard. He basically had one drive, but still, it just looks a lot better. And there's a level of belief there with Zappe at quarterback that obviously is missing with Mac Jones.
Yeah, the Zappe commentary is not in a vacuum of just talking about Zappe versus the NFL or what he is. It's versus, Mac Jones and what the team looked like. So I think to me, it's fair to second guess how they handled the thing from the absolute start. Chris, when you talked about, so I listened to most of the broadcast last night, but I missed the part that you pointed out in your email, a story that was that Herbstreit told that you were talking about?
Kaylee Hartung. Okay. And it's funny. Right before we went on the air, I just went to make sure. It's at 7:38 left in the second quarter for anybody who has it's the game on their DVR who was able to get the local copy. But she's talking about how after Zappe got cut, he talked to his college offensive coordinator, the guy who was his offensive coordinator all 4 years, Houston Baptist and at Western Kentucky. And the guy was, trying to cheer him up. And Zappe said, according to Hartung, don't worry, I got this. By the end of the year, I'll be the starter. And I just thought that was really interesting. And that sort of tells you, one, his level of spunk and moxie, which you got to like. And I respect that. So one, it tells you that. Two, it tells you, okay, this is not the backup quarterback I want when they take a quarterback with the top 5 pick, because he's not going to accept being a backup. He's not going to be the guy to support the young guy. He's going to undermine that guy the same way he has Mac Jones. And I'm not blaming him for what's happened with Mac Jones. That's not on Bailey Zappe, but he's not content to be the backup. And so, and just his level of glee the last couple of weeks over being the starter and over Mac's demise and the roller coaster comment leading up to the Thursday night game, that just sort of shows you that he was never content being the backup, is not going to accept that role. And even if he plays really well here, you have to ask yourself, do I want this guy as my backup sort of undermining and maybe puncturing the confidence of the young franchise quarterback I'm bringing in. So I found that to be a really interesting story.
So Chris, in retrospect then, is it fair to question as to whether or not maybe Mack got him cut or helped to get him cut at that time because he felt threatened? And we've seen them do that before. They ship out Garoppolo to basically do a solid for Brady.
Yeah, that's a fair point. I don't know if that's true or not. I don't think that is from what I've witnessed. You know, I remember going to one practice during training. I'll just say I remember going to one practice during training camp, and it's like they did a few drills and then they started to like stretch in a circle, and Zappe and Mack were next to each other because they had been in the drills together. Then they went to stretch in a circle and they couldn't get far enough away from each other fast enough, and they each had their sort of little. You know, they were holding court with their little groups. It was very like high schoolish. Like I'm at this table, you're at that table. It's like Sharks and Jets or something from West Side Story. So yeah, I don't think that's the great. I would be curious to hear what the discussions are and what the level of support is and what the relationships are in that quarterback group. And let me ask you this: a lot of times when a guy loses his job or somebody's injured and the backup has to go in, doesn't the backup talk about so-and-so has been great. He's been so supportive. He's been helping me. I talked to him. We talk on the side. Do you hear any of that with Zappe and Mack?
No.
Negative.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Let's grab a call here for Gasper. Let's make some of these in. Nelson in North Attleboro. Go ahead, Nelson.
Yes, thanks for not asking how I'm doing. But if Mac Jones is put on a trading block like Zappe was, you think there would be any takers? I'll hang up and make your day. Thanks.
Yes. There definitely will be.
Yeah,
and not that
the Toronto Argonauts.
No. Because the draft was he was drafted recently enough that there are scouts and front office people who scouted him, and Pats weren't the only team that liked him. So whether it was just Shanahan or Lynch or who I forget who was the guy that was interested in San Francisco, sure there's someone else somewhere else, and it only takes two or three. There were probably two or three teams that liked what they saw from Mac Jones, would have drafted Mac Jones if they had a need or he was available to them. And so those teams will look at it and say, well, 3 years of that clown show, they ruined him. We liked him coming out of college. There's no reason not to like him now. Whether his problems aren't his fault, and we're going to give him a second chance. I definitely think there'd be a spot for him, Chris.
Yeah, I think the question, guys, is there will be interest. I mean, all you have to do is look at, Mitchell Trubisky's still in the league. I mean, that's, 2017 second overall pick. So he's still bound. Here's the question, though. The interest from Mac Jones, is it like Baker Mayfield interest where he got a chance to be a starter in Carolina? That didn't work. Now he's the starter in Tampa. Is it as a starter or just a quarterback on the roster? That's really the question. Is anybody still going to go into this and say, we think Mac Jones can be our starter or compete for a starting job? Or does he need some sort of rehabilitation? Like when Trubisky left Chicago, he went to Buffalo and he was, clearly going to be the backup in Buffalo for a year before he tried to get like another type of job? Or is he does Mac go into Marcus Mariota mode at this point where you're like a backup type quarterback, or somebody willing to give Mac an opportunity to be a starter again in the NFL? That's really the question. And that also plays into what a team is willing to give up. Does a team look at it and say, we're trading for our potential starter, or this is just a depth quarterback that we have in case our guy goes down?
So, Mike, right. I was just going to ask the same question about Zappe. What if Zappe plays well here down the stretch? Chris, could they get anything for him?
Maybe, but here's the thing about that, Matt, and it goes back to what I just said to you guys. And Burt Breer, I've heard Burt Breer talk about this in terms of why certain quarterbacks aren't in the league, or maybe why a guy doesn't fit as a backup. Part of being a backup is having a willingness on some level to accept that role and accept that you're not the starter, and you're kind of like the quarterback caddy. You have to be a support system for the start. Well, if you're not willing to do that, and that's not part of your personality or DNA, then you might have less value. So now, I don't think there's a team in the league that looks at Bailey Zappe and says, that's our starter who's going to get us to the playoffs and we're going to win a playoff game. Remember, he got cut and had to go through waivers. Anybody could have claimed him, and no one did. So can he be in this league? 100%. Is he a high-quality backup potentially? 100%. But if he's not willing to accept that and he's going to undermine the starter, he'd have to go to a situation like Kansas City or Buffalo or Cincinnati where it's like, that guy is like, who's this twerp? I don't care. He's my backup quarterback. It doesn't bother me. He couldn't go to a situation that's maybe, like, he couldn't even go to like a Detroit with Goff because Goff's a little bit of a head case, and having people like pushing where he's going to try and push the starter and turn it into a competition. I think that would turn a lot of teams off.